have Gregory here. Let's see, where's James? Is James? Oh, there he is. Hi, audience. Thank you so much for joining us once again. I'm so excited about this event today because we will be talking about how to make your CFO happy, and who doesn't want that? I have those two amazing speakers with me here today. But before I start, we have a poll for you, audience. Today, I'm gonna open. You can go on your right-hand side. There's a panel. Just click on the poll and select your option in there. I'm going to do a quick introduction here and do an icebreaker with my speakers. And after you answer the poll, go into the chat and tell us where you're calling from, audience. I am in New York City. It's so hot in here today. Summer is really coming in today. So I'm going to ask my speakers, what is your favorite ice cream flavor to beat the heat that we are experiencing here? Gregory, let's start with you. What is your favorite ice cream?
Yeah, I grew up down the street from the original Ben and Jerry's in Burlington, Vermont as a kid, so I have to go with chocolate chip cookie dough.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
and Gregory doesn't know this, but I grew up in Burlington, Vermont.
Oh, right. Well. I do know
oh, wow.
That.
There we go.
And Ben and Jerry actually served me ice cream when I was a kid. They were just the only two guys behind the counter in an old gas station. And another great old flavor and new flavor is mint chocolate chip. So good, mint chocolate chip.
Oh, that's a polemic one. People do not like chocolate mint in ice cream, at least here in New York City. Also, we have people.
I'm different.
Yeah, let's see. We have people from everywhere calling from. I see some people here. Awesome. So let me start in here. We are here today to talk about 5 CFO-friendly paid ad tactics with those two amazing speakers. As I mentioned, I'm in New York City, and my name is Eduardo. I am a community events manager at Modern Sales Pros. And at Modern Sales Pros, we have a big goal, and this goal is to make your life easier. We are the world's largest and highest quality community for people in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. And our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there. And we do that through online events like this one you're about to experience. We have a forum where you can go and ask questions and answer questions about things that you know. We have quarterly summits, and we're starting to get back into in-person events. We have happy hour coming up for Dreamforce in September. That should be a lot of fun. So if you're not already part of the community, you will be invited to join right after this session, and you will be able to check our calendar and see what it's up next. Let's talk a little bit about how to get the most out of this session. So first, this session is being recorded. So you will be able to access the recording right after this event. The Modern Sales Pros team will work to get the recording for you as fast as possible. And you will also receive an email with key takeaways and some resources that SalesIntel made available for us today. And talking about SalesIntel, at Modern Sales Pros, we work with partners. And today, this event is sponsored by SalesIntel. We have James in here. He's going to give us a little introduction about SalesIntel. But I want to mention SalesIntel has a booth, and you can find special resources there just for you. And you can also request a demo with them. So just click the button at the top of this page, and the SalesIntel team will get in touch pretty soon. So James, tell us why people should request a demo with SalesIntel today.
SalesIntel, we have comprehensive data, B2B data, that is going to help optimize the efficiency of your go-to-market, right? You're probably familiar, candidly, with ZoomInfo, and I'm here to tell you there is an alternative in market with the customer service and support you need and human verified capabilities that allow us to go out through a human research team of 2,000 and get the data that you're missing, right? No provider in the space is going to have everything. We have all the account, contact, intent, news data you need with the software integrations you need to succeed. So give us a look.
Awesome. Yes. Request a demo, and then we'll get ready to get in touch with you, audience, later today. James, you're going to be our moderator for today, so I'm going to pass the mic to you. You can introduce yourself, ask Gregory to introduce himself, and then just jump right into content. I will leave the stage, but I'll be watching live and taking notes. Audience, you're in for a treat, so enjoy.
Yeah. Thanks, Eduardo, as always, and thanks to the MSP community. Gregory, how you doing?
I'm doing good today.
Good. I think we're going to have I wouldn't call this a fireside chat. It's more like an ice cream chat. We're all having our ice cream. We're going to have a little talk. So I'm here with Gregory. We're going to talk about 5 CFO friendly paid ad tactics, right? How to scale your B2B advertising while not breaking the bank. This is a great topic. I have a lot of passion around it. I know Gregory does too. And I'm sure all of you, if you showed up for this, are curious. What are we going to say here? What are we going to talk about? There's lots of magic wands that people wave over paid advertising. And a couple of things we talk about today, I hope are surprising and enlightening in terms of how we would go about it. I'm really going to rely on Gregory here, who I've known for a very long time, as sort of a sounding board and an expert advisor. So jumping right in to the discussion today, we'll introduce ourselves in a moment, but we're going to take a moment to have a moment of Zen together. I always like to do that on these sessions to really sort of come together on the problem we all face as marketers, and then go through 5 tactics, right? Earn before you buy, pipeline's best friend, B2B display at B2C scale, retargeting with intent, and then speaking their language being the CFO's language. So our moment of Zen, and this was at the heart of the poll that you saw. If you haven't answered the poll, I would. It's going to be fun to look at the results. But this is what we all probably wake up to on a daily basis as marketers. The volume complaint, right? Or the cost complaint. Gregory, give us the rundown on this and tell me your thoughts on this and how you view the problem here.
Yeah, it's always one or the other is the problem, right? Like we don't have enough qualified leads. We need to get our sales team more opportunities. And then you do that and you're like, oh my God, why is it so expensive? Our CAC is getting too high. We're struggling to, find people that are qualified but can do it for the right price, right? So it's always trying to manage these two things. And I guess like at a high level, I'd say like the good news is if you're facing these challenges, you're not alone, right? This is what all marketers face. And so, yeah, today, James and I will at least give you some feedback and ideas about ways that we've solved this, and hopefully that can help you solve your challenge when it comes to this type of situation.
Absolutely. So jumping in to the poll here, hopefully you saw this and you're answering it, but what does your exec team complain about most? High cost of leads, low volume of leads, or it varies depending on the day or the quarter. So a little bit of fun to help us all come together on this issue. Jumping in, I already introduced myself, right? But SalesIntel is a little bit of a more thorough job. We have really a 4-step process with our data and software that helps you get far more efficient, including your paid advertising. You'll hear a lot about targeting the right accounts, locking in your ICP and quantifying it with data, then knowing who in that target market is actually in market with a variety of intent signals. We'll also talk about that. Of course, then we give you the contact data you need to go find them, whether it's outbound through your BDR AE team, or in the case of this discussion today, to take that information, those accounts and those contacts, and get your advertising and paid strategy to be far more effective. And then to wrap that up, as I mentioned earlier, there is no provider in this industry that's going to have all the data you need, right? You're always going to have holes. That's just a reality. And so we actually have human verification that allows you to have a research team that's an extension of your own team go out and get leads. So that's just a quick intro of SalesIntel. Brand Zen and my friend here, Gregory. Introduce yourself, Gregory, and your background a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in digital advertising and marketing from its inception. I started with a firm that maybe Terra. Terra is still the largest media agency in the world. And they were one of the first people to take digital advertising seriously and had a great run there. And since that time, I've led marketing for a variety of high-tech startups. I was at a company called Inmobi with James here, who I loved working with. I also was at a firm called Admiral that many people have heard of. They basically invented the concept of advertising retargeting. And I was the head of marketing for a firm named Sojourn for about 5 years, and have a lot of experience in the digital marketing advertising space. And so now I have my own consultancy and focus on marketing strategy and content creation, primarily for early stage high-tech companies. And I'm happy to be here and excited to chat with James today.
Cool. So let's get into it, Gregory. Number one, this is always a surprising way to start for people, at least from what I've seen. Earn before you buy. So Gregory, take us through some of your pro tips here, and let's get into a discussion about this.
Yeah, in terms of like, building awareness and getting deep into customer acquisition, it's important that like you have a really deep understanding of who your ideal customer profile is. And you need to know within that who are the personas that you want to target. That part's key, right? And I think today, this concept has been around, but the difference between like what was happening many years ago to what we're doing now is that once you have that defined, you're able to pretty much find out who they are in a fairly granular way, right? I like to think that at this stage, almost all marketing is actually account-based marketing. You should be able to define like not just the companies and titles, but within that, who are the people in those roles that you want to market to, and through a variety of tools, you can find those people and pretty much target all of your marketing directly to them. And SalesIntel is one of the companies that obviously lets you do that. And so at high level, that's how I think about marketing today, is that we've gone from unknown to known. And now that we know who the people are, it's all about trying to do that and do it at the right cost.
Yeah, and I think the key for me here is so often we get in the trap of like go, 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 and then you start spending money, and that money spreads out over the market in a very inefficient way, because taking the time to make sure that you tightly defined it, right? And whether it's one segment or multiple, right? It all can be delineated and defined, right? And then that next step is about testing that, right? Testing that position via the content itself, whether it's people improving click-through rates in the website, or the collateral you build for your sales team resonating or not resonating. And then finally, how it is that the content and messaging from a creative perspective, that last one, testing the messaging resonates. When you've done that and you're seeing that you've got even a trickle of inbound lead flow, or just a handful of experiments with these various segments, the ABM segments that Gregory described, you're much more confident about taking that definition and scaling it through paid advertising. So this may sound simple, but I've seen so many instances where people just go out and they're too broad and they're too generic, and they're not taking advantage of the specificity of data and targeting, and not being patient enough to make sure that when they spend, it's going to resonate, right? So that's what this is all about. And the whole point is, don't feel pressured to spend before you've earned leads. And here's a good example. I'm sure you've all heard about TAM, SAM, SOM, and I've talked about this before if you've been in these sessions, but it's so vital to not get into a trap of advertising where you're attacking the TAM for sure, or the SAM, right? Get as narrowly focused as you can, right? And the way I think of it is, the more budget constrained you might be, or the earlier you are, the more tightly defined you should be, right? Because that the tightness of that definition is going to get you results. And we've actually, Gregory mentioned how much data is out there now: technographic, firmographic, news information, intent data. Like, we have so much data, and it's not expensive. Being able to leverage that information to get that definition right, and then all that data showing up in your targeting is totally key. And this is an example I've given before, but we did this, right? Thinking about drinking our own champagne. And I know exactly which 26,000 companies today I should be targeting. And when I'm targeting them, my win rates are higher, my ACV is higher, my retention is higher, my lifetime value is higher. All of these lead up to ROI. So I would highly recommend in this area that you take the time to do this really well, test the messaging before we even start spending. So Gregory, you've got a ton of experience in this. So the next step is pipeline's best friend. And the first thing that a lot of you all are probably working with is search engine marketing, paid search. So Gregory, give us some of your tips and best practices here.
Yeah. So I think on the search engine marketing side, I think it works best at what I would call bottom of the funnel, or what now has perhaps been more popularly known as demand capture. So search, everyone understands it works. Like, people are typing in things and they're actively looking for something. So hopefully they're actively looking for a product that's in your category. And by finding those people and reaching those people with search engine marketing, you can capture demand. And that's why I think people love this tool. That's why the ROI is so high. They're already looking for this. So definitely like use this as a high intent channel, and you want to capture as much demand as possible. But it's important to understand like how this channel works and make sure that it fits into the larger mix of what you're doing in terms of marketing, right? You're harvesting these people pretty early. It means that to some degree, it's not as scalable as perhaps you would want. My experience has typically been search works great. They convert well. It's low cost, but there's just not enough volume, particularly for like some B2B SaaS type platform. There's only so many searches that are being done in a given month that are relevant to your product in the regions that you operate. So that's important to take into consideration, that the volume just is not going to be that high. And also what's important is to just think about, brand terms versus long tail versus your most popular terms, right? So there's about perhaps 3 categories that I think are a simple way to organize your campaigns. So people that are literally searching for your brand and your term, like I think in the early stages, it's important to capture those and pay for those, right? You want people that are searching for sales intel, they're searching for brands and, or they're searching for your company. Like you want to pay for them and you want to get that traffic because it's usually someone who's been like very involved. Maybe sales is talking to them. They're ready to buy, right? And then you've got the things that are very clear in terms of like what they're looking for, like CRM solution or advertising agency, search engine marketing. You want to capture that demand as well. And they've got the long tail keywords, and you can get a lot of false positives there. So I would just be careful about how much you allocate to those ones, and look really carefully at what's happening. And keep in mind that like you don't want to increase this long tail and just get a lot of clicks that aren't really relevant to what you're doing. You want to make sure that you look at that and you spend what's appropriate to be effective with search.
Yeah, I think the trap here that I've seen is, there's a couple things. One is your CFO will lean in and be like, wait a minute, why are we paying for our own brand? Right. So I've gotten that one a million times. I'm sure you all have. Like, that's a really simple test to say, literally show the CFO what a search result looks like. Show them that your competition is doing what you're doing and trying to intercept you just like you're intercepting them. So, or run a test like for a week and literally show the financial pitfall of not owning your own brand. So that's number one. The other thing I think Gregory mentioned, those ad groups in how you organize it, your own brand, competitive brands, and then those tail terms, where I think people have fallen into a trap on those tail terms is they try to push it too far. And then you get into the false positives Gregory talked about, and you get into a lot of wasted money. It just has finite scale at some point. So you just have to be aware of that and measure. The last thing I'd say is measure at the cost per opportunity, right? Measure at the opportunity or pipeline level, because if you just measure on the clicks and the leads, those false positives will take you in the wrong direction from an ROI perspective. So, and then the thing that I think we'll land on before we go to the next point is we just talked about the ICP and the targeting, and then we switch right into search, right? Little bit of a strange flow here, because you cannot target search, right? So search, you just define this tight ACP. Search is one of the few areas where it's keyword based with very limited like firmographic, geographic type targeting. So compared to a lot of the other paid channels, this is not very targetable. So you have to keep that in mind as well. Anything before we close and move on this, Gregory?
Yeah, just that the false positives could be easier to identify than perhaps you think. Because I've had people get all excited, they got some lead, and all I had to do is like look up the email, and it was like a student, or they had some random website that was like a research firm, right? They're clearly like not going to be a customer. So I don't think it's a lot of effort to determine if they're false positives. And then you share that with people, and you can demonstrate to them that like, hey, like this guy is not, or this person's not going to be a customer of us, and we don't need to worry about it.
So number 3, building brand. This is where we get into probably one of the harder parts of this discussion, which is B2B display at B2B scale, right? So this is about building brand. And And I guess, Gregory, I'm going to have you kick off again with your
Yeah.
perspective, right? Having been at Kara from the earliest days of digital all the way through to managing the teams, but talk a little bit about the pro tips here.
Yeah, I think you framed it correctly, like talking about like search, right? It's this bottom of the funnel capture piece. People are actively searching for things, so you want to get them, right? But it has all these limitations. One of the things like that we talked about when I first started at Kara was that search is something that you can't use to create demand. That's why I refer to it as demand capture. You can't make it, like you can't launch a product. You can't let people know about it. You have a new product, you're a new brand, you're new to the marketplace. Like they're not searching for you. They might not even be searching for your product if you're doing something really innovative and creating a new product, right? So that's why you need other channels, and display ads still have a place, I think, in the marketing mix. And I like to use the terms like middle, bottom, and top of the funnel. I would put display in the middle. And the reason I put it in the middle is that like there's so much technology out there now that allows you to target those ads at the people that you want to reach. Just like we talked about in the beginning, like your account-based marketing approach, like defining your ICP, defining your personas, and then you could do very specific targeted campaigns with specific messaging for them, right? And so you're targeting them, and like maybe they're not quite in market, but you want to build awareness, build a reputation, build a brand with them. Let them know that like you do solve this problem. Maybe they're not aware of the problem. They're not problem aware yet, right? And as they become problem aware, they'll see your ads and they'll take action, and then they become a buyer. And so that's like nurturing them down the funnel. And that's where I think display advertising plays a part in the advertising mix or the marketing mix.
Yeah. And Gregory hit on something that's really around that second point, where I've seen this trap a lot, where lead quality, I would say, just when you're running the strategy, you want to distinguish lead quality from readiness to buy. That's the key thing. Explain to your sales team and your CFO that, look, if I get a lead that's on target, it's in the ICP, it's the right persona, if I engage them to my display, often at a branding level, right? Like this webinar for all of you, right? This is a classic mid-funnel type situation we're in. That lead is very valuable to you longer term, even if they're not ready to buy, right? And so I think you've got to really defend the fact that you've done your job to get a targeted ICP in the right persona lead to engage with the brand and engage with the company, even if it might be 3, 6, 9 months before they're ready to buy. You know, some people are in multi-year deals, right? But you've still done your job, and a lot of that demand or brand build and that problem awareness sort of epiphany is going to net out, right, at some point. So you just got to really defend, I think, that lead quality aspect. And we'll talk more about number 3, where we'll get into this notion of blended attribution, because, and just to preview that, right? I mean, Gregory, we know like it's really hard, almost impossible, I'd say, at scale to show direct ROI for scaled display advertising, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I always joke that I talk to all these people who like run ad blockers, and then they still want to measure advertising performance based on clicks. Like it just doesn't make sense, right? Their own behavior is that they don't click on ads. And I do this all the time when I give a talk, is like, put your hand up if you clicked on an ad in the last 6 months. And like, there's never a hand that goes up. So I understand the desire to have like certainty, right? So when someone clicks, you're certain that they took action, and everyone's aware that Google works on clicks. But there's other types of channels out there where clicks aren't the natural behavior of how things work, right? So that's why like what I would call blended attribution, looking at both of them and getting a mix that you're comfortable with, is important, because like people look at ads and read them, and that's the behavior, and that's how they work.
Yeah, and we'll get into this third point. It's an entire pro tip that's coming up. So hang tight. I'm sure you're all wondering, well, how do I deal with my CFO in this issue? And we've got some advice for you coming up on that last point.
Right, there's even a comment. I use an ad blocker. Exactly.
Yeah. But look, this is a great, so I don't know if you're all, like one way that I would recommend early stage that you think about it is when you look at the various channels out there, this is a quick profile of essentially their pricing model, their cost profile, their reach and their targeting, right? And so each of the major, the B2B channels that we all think about right off the, top of our mind are obviously you've got Meta and Google, which are your scaled lookalike models. You can, oftentimes you can deal, you can do direct, you can take like, for example, at SalesIntel, we'll use our direct contacts, we'll do a direct match. Often we'll expand that to the lookalikes, right? Because we don't have all the contacts you're going to want to target. So that's Google and Meta. And then LinkedIn has the benefit of giving you both specific account targeting along with contact targeting, okay? And then you've got syndication, and now you got programmatic, right? So what I have found to be extremely effective, and I think a lot of you may not be leveraging, is programmatic. And when you look at programmatic, just as a primer, not sure how many of you have used this before, but programmatic is where you have an advertiser, right? You've got the data we just talked about, right? That often using SalesIntel or some other B2B provider, where you know the account, you know the contacts, right? You can take all that information, right? Run it through your DSP or directly run it through the native, and then an ad spot shows up, right? So again, this is where the use of that data, right, can be implemented into a programmatic world. The programmatic advertising world is people like The Trade Desk. There's plenty of people out there. We have partnerships with Suncasting. And the idea is that you're able to really significantly scale the brand impact through programmatic in ways that it's much harder to scale to some of the more obvious B2B channels. So if you look at this actual test, right, this was a $10,000 spend that I did here at SalesIntel just to prove the point to my CFO. And I was like, look, for that same amount of money in each of these channels, in Meta, I got 100,000 impressions. In LinkedIn, I got a little over 100,000 impressions. Yeah, my click-through rates were much, much higher. The number of clicks I get, you can see. But look at now look at the CPM. Look at the CPC, right? Look at the difference in the economics when you're the CFO. And then finally, look at those impressions, right? So the reality is this is not a channel where you're trying to drive direct response so much as create that mid-funnel awareness, right? Build that brand so that you can later harvest demand. And it's extremely cost effective when you're highly, highly targeted. What I did, or what I try to do now on a routine basis, is use programmatic, which is scaled and cost effective. And I want to make sure I'm getting 5 to 10 impressions per month within those 26,000 companies that I care about. And it's a really efficient way to do that. And that is starting to show up in my overall ROI as a marketing team in ways that I'll share with you in a minute. So bottom line here is it's real easy to just go to Meta, go to Google, go to LinkedIn, and those are all channels you're going to test and optimize over time. But I would really advise you to look at and test the programmatic world. It's a great way to get coverage and reach outside of the noise of the typical B2B channels. I mean, Gregory, you know a lot about programmatic. I probably didn't do the best job of explaining it, but
yeah, I think you did a great job.
Thank you. All right, cool. So number 4, retarget with intent. So this is about using B2B display to harvest demand, right? So we just talked about B2B display ads as a way to build brand. There is another mechanism within the data that exists now readily in the market for you to differentiate between display for building brand and display for harvesting demand, much like search. And I think this is probably one of the better kept secrets out there, candidly. And really the pro tips here are there are 3 things, and then I'm going to go through this section and then have Gregory give you real examples from two of the companies where he ran marketing. But the key here is this: you've got the ICP definition we talked about up front. You then can layer on from multiple sources intent, right? And intent can be Bombora intent data. It can be intent data from SalesIntel. It can be news data. It can be intent from within your own CRM. We'll talk about that, right? But when you actually see intent within your ICP, you're now able to segment your strategy into, am I building brand or am I trying to harvest demand? And I'll explain what I mean by that. And then the last point is that intent is everywhere. And my advice to all of you as marketers is get as much intent data as you can. There's no one source is going to satisfy everything. So, and this is ultimately in a quantified way, again, drinking our own champagne. This is how I view our ICP, right? I talked about the fact that my ICP, as we talked today on this webinar, is about 792 million in opportunity within my ICP, right? To take share away from ZoomInfo. I know which 15% of that ICP is in market now, or I have a high degree of confidence. And so when I do my advertising, right, I'll come back to this in a minute. When I do my advertising, I will segment the display to be like, for those 15% of accounts and people that I suspect are in market, I will give them a bottom funnel, hard-hitting, direct response ad, right? Unlimited pricing, unlimited credits, right? Radical new pricing strategy to help draw people in. On the other hand, if they're top brand, I might invite them to a webinar like this so they get to understand and hear from us, create a relationship with my brand in a way that's an exchange of value, right? So that difference is all comes down to intent data. And so again, at SalesIntel, and many of you out there probably leverage some form of intent, right? There's Bombora, company surge intent data. Foundry is another type of intent provider, similar to Bombora, but from a different part of the world, the internet, right? There's first party intent. So the ability to, in our case, use visitor intel to resolve anonymous website visitors into people who are actually visiting the website. Gregory will talk about that. News, right? With news and alerts, it's a great way to find out somebody's been recently funded, or there's been a strategy change that's been announced where it's a signal that they may want to look at your product or service. And then even within your own CRM, all those closed lost deals that you've got, all those, all of the job changers you might have seen, people who you have a relationship with, but you've noticed are in a new position. All of that data can be combined into a signal of intent so that you are now able to, every couple of weeks, update your targeting to reflect, am I building brand or am I trying to harvest that demand? So hopefully that all makes sense, but I'm going to have Gregory make it even clearer because I think he's done this in depth, and I think he's going to be really good at talking about the notion of retargeting with intent.
Yeah, both these companies actually used a lot of targeting data to power display campaigns. And so I saw a lot of different customers use a variety of strategies in order to do exactly what James was talking about. At AdRoll, they invented the concept of retargeting. So just to level set for people that don't know what display retargeting is, display retargeting is when someone lands on your website and you tag them, and then when they leave, those ads follow them around the internet, right? We've all seen this. We've all talked about it. We've maybe even complained about it, right? But it became a really effective way to use a low-cost channel, programmatic advertising, to reach customers who are at the bottom of the funnel, right? And give you an effect that was not on par with search. It was a little bit different, but serve that kind of middle to bottom of the funnel category, but through another channel, right? And AdRoll was really good at doing that. And what they realized over time was that same concept about finding a person and targeting them could be used across a number of different ways with different data sets, right? So you could start uploading this data and getting an email list and targeting people. And then the email list begot lookalike targeting, which is we take all these emails and we find people who are on their kind of friend graph or something like that, and then target them, right? Or people that are in their kind of product suite and then target them. So I've seen this work really well at AdRoll across a wide range of customers. And so there's still an excellent option if you're interested in doing more programmatic work and working with a wide range of data sets. Sojourn is a different company where they specialized in travel. And so it was very interesting, like how we approach our own marketing at Sojourn is within the travel space, we realized there were only a couple of verticals that were at scale that made sense for us to market to, right? And hotels was the largest one. So when you talk about your TAM, SAM, SOM, we looked at it and said, okay, all the hotels around the world are TAM, but there's only so many hotels that we can actually market to today because they need to be in a specific geographic region. They need to be a certain scale. They need to have certain technology. And so we actually were able to create an entire CRM database of every single one of those hotels and use it to power all of our marketing, right? So we had the full data set. We knew who all of the hotels were. And then over time, right, you have to keep updating it because people leave or there's changes or they get acquired. I mean, there's a lot of maintenance that goes on. It's not like you just build this data set and you're done. But once you have it, you can use it to power a variety of campaigns, many of them through display advertising. So you understand who that person is, what company they work for. And then you can use a wide range of data enrichment tools, other types of tools to focus that on those target customers and really target them at a variety of stages with a variety of content, right? You can do awareness building on the awareness building side, surveys, things that help them understand what their peers are doing. That's what everybody in marketing always wants to know, like what's the guy or person down the street doing, right? That's a great way to kind of capture their attention. And as you move down the funnel, you want to promote things like case studies, like help them understand how your platform works, right? And get them excited about what you're able to do and give examples about other people have had success at the highest level. Like the most successful campaigns I've ever run have all been some form of like case study, compendium, examples, like real world narratives that demonstrate success other people have had with your product.
Yeah, so I think that the way I would wrap this up for everybody to make it super clear and actionable, I'm just going to scroll back here, is this ultimately kind of wraps together these two areas of discussion around display, right? The first is this, right? So I would investigate the use of programmatic to get you reach and scale and reach frequency, pure branding, very cost effectively, right? I would then recommend that you do all you can to roll together intent signals, right? All the intent signals that are out there, right, that are available to you. It's very cost effective. And with those intent signals, you can get to a pretty good understanding of who's in market now and update that every couple of weeks so that you're knowing with some reasonable accuracy who is actually in market now, what 10 or 15 or 20% of your ICPs in market now. You then run campaigns that acknowledge that. And if you're early on in your journey, you're going to get better ROI from, closer to bottom of the funnel display ads against the intent segment. And as you grow and have more financial freedom, right, you show success, you can start to expand that display budget out into a much wider part of the ICP where you're not going to see the same ROI, but in order to scale and grow the company, you got to push the needle, right? And get those display ads and get that visibility in front of the rest of the ICP. And so this brings us to our last point, right? And this is, I think, one of the most important things for all of you to do with your CFO or with your controller or VP of finance or whoever it is that's running the numbers in your company, right? Which is speak their language. I highly recommend the use of the LTV to CAC ratio metric. It's really simple to deploy and use. And it gives you the ability to explain what you're doing to your CFO. That's the hard part about marketing is a lot of people you talk to what we do is complex, right? And we're trying to move all these needles and knobs to drive lead flow and ROI for the company. I think this is a great way to make it clear and understandable while still talking in financial language that a CFO or VP of finance will fully understand. So I guess, Greg, you've done this before when dealing with budgeting. Like, give us your pro tips here before we jump into this last, discussion point.
Yeah. Well, this gets to the heart of the discussion, like we kicked it off in the beginning, right? Is like, you don't have enough leads or you're spending too much money, right? So this is how like that math comes together. So trying to understand your lifetime value, right? Like, what does the value of a customer bring to your company? Generally, that's something based over a year. It's usually annual contract if you're in SaaS, right? It's generally easy to understand the lifetime value. The more complicated discussion is your cost to acquire a customer, right? Like, how much are you willing to spend and what does it make sense to spend? And I think that's a conversation. I also think that is something that there needs to be flexibility because it varies over time. It varies over from channel to channel. It'll also vary, like, given the competitive nature of the marketplace, right? So advertising doesn't happen in a vacuum, or demand generation in general doesn't happen in a vacuum. There are other people out there competing with you, and that can drive up costs, right? So you need to take all that into account. And generally what I like to think about is that, look, your CAC might go higher than your cost to acquire a customer for certain periods of time. And that might make strategic sense if it's a competitive situation that you need to win, if it's a certain time of year where you really need to fill your pipeline because you have a seasonal product. I think that's a really good example of where, hey, in September, we just go way above our CAC. We spend the majority of our budget. That's our strategy, and everything closes at this time of the year. And then the rest of the year, you have some campaigns that run. They run at a much lower cost to acquire a customer because it's much less competitive, right? So the nature of your business and how it works is really important to take into consideration and maybe look at it annually, right? Like, when are the periods that we need to be really strong in terms of like reaching out to customers? When are the periods where we need to pull back, right? And I would even recommend, like, divide it into two categories. You have what I would call always on campaigns. And those are things like the search that we talked about, right? Just capturing the bottom of the funnel. You've maybe got some display stuff like retargeting. It's just always running. You have a cap on it. You don't overspend on it. You have a good understanding of like what it works, what doesn't. And on top of that, you have kind of this variable spend. And you use that to push into the marketplace, to product launches, to take advantage of specific times of the year that are important for your business. And that's where the CAC is going to vary, right? So generally you lay it out for people and you say, like, these are the things that we run all the time. We have a very clear understanding of like what works and what doesn't. They're not scalable, right? We just maximize what we can do in search here. We maximize what we do in retargeting here. And then we've got this variable budget that we use in order to launch new products and take advantage of strategic opportunities. And that's where CAC is going to vary. And so what I try to recommend is like, hey, average that out over a long period of time, average it out in addition to the organic bump that you get. And typically you'll end up with a CAC that's still something that's acceptable.
Yeah, and I think the key here, and we'll get into a detailed example of how I think both Gregory and I have used this, and it's very effective, is number one, it is a source of truth. It aligns you with the CFO, the CEO, and the CRO. You all agree, okay, this is our CAC, this is our lifetime value. You all agree on that, right? And then there's no debate about it, and you can just do your job and have conversations. That's super empowering and super important. And I've seen so many cases where people don't do that. The debate around how do we even measure ROI is endless, and therefore it's really hard to progress, right? The other thing that Greg alluded to was the agreement on risk tolerance, right? So the seasonality example was a great one because in certain times of the year, you want to increase your tolerance for risk / you're going to drive that CAC up because you have to. That's when you want to harvest a seasonal surge, right, in your business. And then, as we mentioned, the use of LTV to CAC ratio helps you deal with what we call ROI leakage, right? You get so much of your display advertising isn't going to show up in direct response. But if you're doing your job and you're well targeted and your creative and messaging is on point, you will see the LTV to CAC ratio get better or be maintained. And so let me jump into this example, right? So first of all, just from a formula perspective, have this discussion with your executive team. Lifetime value, look, in most companies, and in our case, it's like year one ACV, right? And then we do a 3-year and a 5-year lifetime value where it's like, what's my retention expansion, right? My NRR. And then I do that for year 2 and I do that for year 3. And that you multiply that out. And oftentimes you're getting a contract for, I don't know, 20,000, but the lifetime value might be 50 or 60,000 or 70,000, right? Lifetime value has to consider that, the lifetime value. And then you've got your customer acquisition cost. This is a little bit trickier, but what you want to do is think about for your inbound marketing channel, right? When you bring in leads, what is actually the cost of closing that deal all the way through? So, for example, if you need salespeople to close deals, right? So when you're talking about customer acquisition and measuring marketing ROI, it's not going to be credible for you to stand in front of your CFO and say, the sales team I need to close this inbound business isn't a part of my cost of acquisition. Of course it is. The commissions you pay the sales teams on the deals you win, that's a part of the customer acquisition cost. The software that supports you, whether it's, in our case, it's HubSpot, right? So you got to build out that cost and be really authentic about that to help your CFO really view you as credible, right, in what you're saying and how you're looking at ROI. And when you do this and agree on it, and then you put in the measurement, this is where things start to, where managing all this comes together in a way that's really powerful and relatively simple. So here you do the math on the previous slide. You've got a CAC LTV ratio of 5-to-1, super healthy, right? This is a really healthy business. You can invest with this type of result. But when you break down that LTV CAC ratio by your different channels, you're going to see that each of these levers has very different performance at an individual level. So organic is obviously going to be very profitable, right? You're not paying for advertising, right? People are kind of coming to you, and it's great when you get it and the ROI is really high, but we all know that's where the volume complaint comes in. I need more leads. Paid search we talked about. It's very competitive, but it's usually very easy to make your paid search strategy profitable, right? If it's pretty straightforward to do that. Events is another one where you can measure it, and in our case, like I've got referrals and affiliates. We got email marketing. There's probably 7 or 8 rows of marketing strategy where I have this calculation taking place, but I want to bring you all to this display LTV to CAC ratio concept, because this is where you get the scalability. This is where you build brand. And this is where, if your CFO is conversing with you specific to that channel, you're almost never going to be able to defend your ROI, right? What you have to do is explain this concept and say, hey, we agreed LTV to CAC was our way of dealing with the world. My LTV to CAC as a team is 5-to-1. And yeah, my display that you can see on a daily basis is only 0.5-to-1. But I know that value showing up on organic and ultimately coming back through for the goodness of the business. So the idea that I'm going to cut my display, right, and lower my volume of leads because it isn't directly paying out isn't going to help you scale the company, right? So I hope this is making sense. This is a really simple and powerful way for you to bring this together. As we wrap up and go to Q&A, Gregory, what are your thoughts on this? You do this every day, and so
yeah. I mean, the only thing I'd add is like there's almost always a relationship between your paid channels and organic, and I think it's generally because there's like leakage. It's just you're not able to track it, and so you're usually able to prove that, right? If you like, and I've seen people go dark for a month. I don't recommend it. But I've seen people do it, and like your organic will fall off, right? There's been people like really need to prove this to themselves, and so I've seen it happen. I don't think it's a good idea at all. I don't think you should turn off your demand generation. You want your business to be successful. But I've seen people prove it. So for me, like there's definitely a relationship between all of these, and that's why I like blending it all together. It's the simplest way to approach this. And so yeah, I'm a big fan of this model. And I agree earlier to what James said about like the fully baked cost. That could be harder to get to, but make an effort. Like if you don't have the level of accuracy that you'd like, at least do estimates and just take a stab at it. And your CFO appreciate that, and he'll usually, or she will help you find somebody on the team that can help you fill out that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the other tip or trick here is on that organic side. And so, I don't know if you've all been in this point. I've for sure gone dark just to prove the point. I'm like, I got so frustrated with the discussion that I was like, all right, well, we're gonna shut down. We're gonna shut it down for a month and see what happens. And then sure enough, boom, it drops. You hit a trough. And sometimes you got to just make your point as a marketer, right? And then once you've done that, this conversation, you get back to a stable place. The other thing that I'd recommend you do, and that again, I do it every day, we do it routinely, is on the organic side through your website, through your organic lead capture, ask people, hey, how'd you hear about us? Like conduct some simple research. Maybe it's when your BDR or AEs are qualifying a lead. Just say, hey, curious, how'd you hear about us? And like have display ads be a part of that. And what I have seen, and I use in these conversations internally all the time, is that my direct response clicks from display is maybe single-digit % of my lead flow when you actually look at the attribution within like HubSpot, right? But when I actually ask people and survey them on how they've heard, it's more like, it's anywhere from 3 to 6x what I'm able to pick up through my direct response measurement, right? So that's another way to substantiate what I call view through value, or get to blended attribution, is the point Gregory made earlier. So we promised we'd bring this all full circle. I really hope this gives you a little bit of insight here with some some veterans who've been through this with you all, and really love the time with the team. So we've got Q&A. Eduardo, if you want to pop back up with 7 minutes to go.
Yes, we have some questions coming. Audience, keep on sending questions. We have some time. Let's start with the first one from Elliot. What is a tactical thing you do to help improve sales and marketing alignment?
Yeah, I will go back to there's three things I recommend that I do religiously and I think are vital. Number one, define the ICP in quantifiable, clear terms. Make sure that sales, marketing, and the CFO and CEO all agree this is the sweet spot of our market. It's big enough to give us the ability to go grow the company successfully, but small enough to give us focus. That's number one. Number two is, and it follows that, is lead quality. Define lead quality in account, persona, right? And any terms you can, right? And make sure that lead quality isn't, as I mentioned earlier, about their readiness to buy. If you bring someone into your ecosystem that can be nurtured, you've done your job, right? That's a really big step in closing a deal, maybe 6 months or 9 months from now. And the third thing is what we just talked about. Agree on that, in my opinion, that LTV to CAC ratio and how you calculate it and measure it, including with the CRO. If you do those three things and run your business that way, things become much healthier. The objectivity of conversations becomes much, much, much healthier, and your job gets easier. You're gonna struggle. You're gonna have challenges, but those are the things that I would highly recommend. And great question, Gregory. Anything to add to that, or any other metrics or ideas you've got?
Yeah. So I think it's important that the marketing team understand the challenges that sales face. So I think it's easy for the two teams to work in silos and not really understand each other very well. And I think for me, like, I always want my marketing team to understand that like sales is really hard. And so one way you can do this is to, like, if you record calls, there's things like Gong, there's lots of tools out there, share those calls with your team so that people can hear what sales are saying and what kind of objections they're encountering, so that the marketing team has empathy and also can use that information to improve marketing, right? Like, think like if the salespeople can innately understand that you're in tune with them and that you're trying to address the challenges that they face in the marketplace, that that for me goes a really long way. And I was joking the other day on social media, actually, James, that like at the end of the day, like everyone I talk to in sales, when they tell me what they want, they actually want awareness. I've never had them say like, I want a high converting website landing page. They never say those things. The things that we talk about in marketing are not top of mind. What's top of mind is like they want to walk into the room or get on the call. They want the customer to have heard about the company and have a positive impression of our product. Like they want is brand, actually. So it's important to like have those conversations. Make sure you're meeting with your sales leadership regularly, that you guys are on the same page, and that you're taking that information and like explaining that and helping your marketing team empathize with sales. I think it's very easy for the marketing team to get caught up in all the day-to-day activities of what they're doing, which is complicated and challenging, and be disconnected and somewhat unempathetic of just how hard it is to sell, particularly in this market.
Yeah, it's the summary on that is, it's a great point. Is our job is to be a listening function first and foremost. We got to listen to sales, listen to the market, and get off our high horse. Get out of our ivory tower. Nothing worse than an ivory tower marketer. You will quickly find yourself looking for a job if you are an ivory tower marketer.
I think you both touched in a question Barbara sent. She's asking, is there a disconnect between the marketing channel? Sorry, is there a disconnect between the marketing channel sales thinks works best and where marketing spend the most budget? And it looks like, yes, right? Gregory just mentioned. Let's move to Gianna's. Gianna has a question. How would you define programmatic advertising to executives with no prior understanding or experience?
I would show examples, right? Because and I didn't do a great job of it, but programmatic is essentially, just to give it a little bit more clarity, programmatic is an environment where you've got very high quality publishers at times who can't sell all of their digital inventory, and so what they'll do is they'll give that digital inventory to a DSP or a programmatic player. So what happens is if you show examples, you can say, look, my B2B ad is going to show up in front of our target market, right? And it's going to be in the context of what they do as consumers. It might be when they're on CNN or in ESPN. I mean, to show your brand in that type of high quality environment where you're outside the clutter of most other B2B advertising is a really, really great way to bring to life what programmatic is and does. And then the other thing you can do is show the economics. Be like, look, I can keep trying to break through with all the other B2B brands in LinkedIn and Meta and Google, and you're going to have to some extent, still fight that fight. But I can be outside of all that noise. So and then show like the slide I talked about earlier, run a test like I just did, and show this slide. It'll be real clear, right? How much more financially attractive this methodology is. Gregory, your thoughts here? You've had to do this a million times.
Yeah, so I think there's an easy way is just say like, look, it's ads that aren't on Google, LinkedIn, and Facebook, right? People understand those channels pretty well. It's like all those other stuff, right? Blogs and like news websites and all the other things, and they're all small. So like there's tools out there that aggregate all those ads together and make it easy for you to buy. That's how I would explain it to like a CEO or CFO. It's like, hey, there that are not on the major sites that you're aware of, and they tend to be a lot cheaper, and that's why we want to use that as a marketing channel. And I think the big executives will like that part in particular.
Yeah. And this test, I'll tell you, you can do this with just $1,000 or $2,000 per channel to literally show the impact.
Awesome.
So hopefully, great question. Anything else with the last minute here to go, or we got to,
We have one more from Jenna, I guess is a follow-up question. Can you be successful at this without a third-party intent data?
Can you be successful? For sure. I think for sure you can do all these things, right? I do think that you're going to have to really embrace this part of the conversation, right? Because you're going to, on this display side out to the right, you're not going to see great ROI, right? Directly measurable. So you really got to make sure that this concept and how and your measurement of it, you're really honest about. Like a lot of times when you first start to do this, you might see this overall ratio being 1-to-1. Like you're not ready to spend, and you just got to be honest about that. And your CFO and your CRO should and your CEO should respect you as a marketer who says, we're 1-to-1 right now. We got to unlock and improve our LTV to CAC ratio, and then I can start to raise spend. So I think you can for sure be successful, but you got to commit to this concept and recognize that your display spend is going to be a little bit harder to scale because you don't have the benefit of intent to help make it more, more ROI friendly to begin with.
Awesome. Victoria, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I'll send your question to our speakers, and then they might help you later.
We'll answer them all. We'll get back to you. I'm really glad we got some great questions.
Yeah, we got amazing questions. The audience really participated today. James, do you want to talk about this slide before I close down?
But yeah, I mean, look, we always have, plenty of content. Like we try to build brand authentically with all of you and offer you lots of advice, show up in these. And then I will say, like, I hope you request a demo. I hope you lean in and let us have an opportunity to talk to you. Our pricing model is radically different to enable everything we just described with unlimited credits, unlimited access to our data. Very different than you're familiar with anyone else in the industry. So I hope you lean in. I hope I can go back to my CFO and tell them about the ROI I got from all of you at MSP. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Audience, thank you so much for joining us today. Happy Thursday. Almost the beginning of the weekend, so I hope you enjoyed. You got a lot of information from our speakers. Gregory and James, thank you so much for the knowledge and for always the amazing content. And thanks SalesIntel for partnering with us. Again, request a demo of SalesIntel and visit their booth. They have some resources in there that we have right here in this slide, and you will receive those resources also in the follow-up email that I'll send later today. While the speakers and I hang out backstage, the MSP team will make sure that you audience receive the recording pretty soon and the key takeaways. I hope you enjoyed the weekend. I had a blast here today. Gregory, James, we can go backstage. Audience, bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye, everyone. Enjoy your ice cream.